what a good looking bike. You know, I've taken this thing out like 3 times now, and it has just been so much fun, and just fun to drive. Just a fun bike. If you haven't seen this build, I made a whole build series about this bike from start to finish. We took it from just absolutely nothing special at all and turned into this cool little board tracker style bike here. Just so fun. And then you got the CV here. We got a video coming very soon about this bike. But today we're going to be talking about this guy. If you've seen the title, you've probably already known what a Yamaha Stryker is, or maybe you already have one. This is basically Yamaha's version of the kind of like a wide glide or a Dyna or something like that. From the factory, it did not come with bags. It did not come with this big wheel, although it did come with a 21-inch wheel. But the fork set is a little bit wider than most of the smaller V-twin Japanese bikes. So this is a 1300cc or an 80 cubic inch, whichever you want to call it. So that's about the same, I guess, engine setup as a Dyna. Something pretty comparable. And these things are actually pretty quick for what they are. I've raced the 103 Harleys and the 106 Victories, and it actually either hangs right with them or beats them, believe it or not. And this is only a 1300cc. When I first saw these bikes, it was kind of hard to believe that it was even a Harley. This in particular is the first year they made it, 2011, and they actually don't even make these anymore. I think either 2018 or 2019 was the last year. The only thing on this that is still factory is the actual engine, the actual frame, and the forks are factory, the handlebars are factory, but really everything else on this thing has been modified. And I'm gonna go over all those modifications with you right now. Okay, I guess the easiest way to start on this is start from the front and work our way back. So up front, obviously the biggest thing you notice is the big 26-inch wheel. I ordered this wheel from SMT Machining. It is called the Edge. It's a 26-inch wheel with a V-rubber tire. The front fender is just, I think it was like an Amazon or eBay fender, but it is metal. It came for a Harley-Davidson mount if you had the two side-by-side mounts on the fender, but on the Stryker, they're two side-by-side like this, so I had to kind of cut this a little bit to make it work and kind of make it flow a little bit better. Also, the rotor is changed as well. I got that from SMT Machining as well. It's the painted to match Edge style rotor to match the front wheel. So it kind of looks like, if you look at it from the side, it kind of looks like one big flowing, you know, wheel. All right, moving on to the headlight. This is just I think it's just an eBay shell headlight. I kind of built this on a budget. I don't have a ton of money to throw into this thing. But I did kind of, you know, the same thing I did on the Sportster. I spent money where I had to spend it, obviously on the wheel, and then, you know, saved a little bit of money on the headlight housing. The housing is just a plastic housing. I got it from eBay for a few, like 50 bucks or something. But I did put a nice projector headlight. It really shines and lights up the road really well at night. A couple of the other things, small things I've done, I cut the little fork seal tubes off. They kind of stick up like this. If you've got a Stryker, you probably know what I'm talking about. I cut those off. They just look weird. And then the other biggest thing is the front air ride. So I do have front air ride on this thing. Okay, moving on along here, I just put a nice little phone mount here. It's kind of a double secure phone mount. I did put some Hertz audio tweeters up front. They're starting to rust a little bit, so I'll have to clean those up and paint them. Also, I did put a nice Kenwood Bluetooth receiver in here. It's an amp and Bluetooth receiver all in one. I'll show you that when we get back towards the back here. If you do know these Strykers, all these things came chrome. That thing came chrome. Let's see what else. These valve cover little covers, these are just plastic covers and they come right off. Those came chrome, painted them black. This cover came chrome as well, and it had like a Yamaha emblem right here, which I shaved down and bondoed in and painted it, and I painted the other cover down here as well. And then also this cover right here, that came chrome as well. I just pulled it off and I painted it with a semi-gloss, like engine enamel, I believe is what it was. All right, moving on to this side. As you can see, I bought some floorboards. These are actually floorboards for the rear of a Harley-Davidson. They're kind of small and kind of dinky. I don't love them, but there's really no options for floorboards for these things as far as the mounts. I intend to maybe make some custom ones one day, but these are fine for right now. The next thing is the gas tank. Obviously, the gas tank didn't come like that. I had this painted from a local guy. He did some airbrush work, and it kind of made like a 3D tribal flame type deal. You can see kind of the detail that's in there. It's actually a really nice paint job. I paid a lot of money for it, but it really turned out nice. And at this point, this paint job is, let's see, I had that done back in 2011. So it's about 9 years old now at this point. Also, if you do have a Stryker, you probably know the chrome little trim thing that came up this way. I took that off and I replaced it with this. This is actually a chrome gauge bezel for, I think it's like a Peterbilt gauge cluster, or like I think it's a 3-inch Peterbilt gauge cluster. I don't know. I found it online and it just happened to work out perfect. Okay, moving along this way, you see these 3 switches right here. This is for the electronic center stand up and down. This is for the front air ride, the front compressor, and this is for the rear air ride and the rear compressor. If I were to do this again, I would not mount these switches here. My leg actually hits them sometimes, and a couple people have borrowed the bike and they've had the same problem where their leg hits it. So not a huge deal, but it is kind of annoying. If I were to do it again, I'd maybe run them, you know, 1, 2, 3 right here. There's plenty of room behind this cover. I was just lazy, I guess, or wasn't really thinking right. Again, I built this bike, started on it back in 2011 when I first started working on bikes, basically, and this is kind of my first one, so a lot of things have improved since then. All right, that brings us to this electronic center stand. I actually built this from scratch. I used just a regular 12-volt linear actuator. I think it's like a 4 or 5-inch actuator, and then the feet, I actually 3D printed those on my 3D printer, designed them and made them myself. I basically just used a piece of 1/2-inch steel with a piece of 1/2-inch tube steel, and basically ran it to a pivot point right there. But you can kind of see how that is. That's 100% my original design. I mean, obviously, you know, there's other companies that have electronic center stands, but they don't make them for Strykers. If you're watching this video, you already know that. So here's this side over here. This is the same floorboard as the other side. It's just a Harley Davidson rear floorboard for like a rear peg, and I just made it work on the front because the mounting points are about the same. This exhaust is a PCS or Pacific Coast Star curb burner exhaust. I don't love it. It was very expensive and it's just not held up very well. This paint or Cerakote or whatever you want to call it is really pitted off and just looks like crap up here. They say that this might happen if you have a programmer on it that's not tuned right. I do have a Cobra FI 2000 closed loop system on here, and it is programmed correctly. It doesn't backfire, it doesn't pop. It's programmed correctly and it still does that same thing. So again, I wouldn't recommend these pipes. The only reason I ran them is to make clearance for the front bag, or for the front part of the bag right here, because they stop short. I actually spoke with a guy that does dyno tuning, and he said that these pipes are the absolute worst for when it comes to making power, and I tend to agree. When I put these pipes on, I did have the Cobra sweat pipes at first. I felt a lot more power than I did out of these PCS curb burner exhaust. So again, I wouldn't recommend these if you want performance. The only reason I did them was for clearance. Okay, so as far as the intake, this is a intake adapter from Low and Mean. Just adapts onto a 3-bolt Harley adapter. And this is just a small little velocity stack with a little screen filter on here. I just like it because it's low profile and it kind of looks sleek. I did have one of the spike filters on here for a while, but I don't know, those things were kind of cheap looking and I just kind of was over that. So I like the look of this lower profile intake. And it actually sounds really cool too. You can really hear a lot of air sucking as well. All right, and that brings us back to the very end of this thing, my favorite part of this bike, and a lot of the reason why you guys are probably here. But this is the bagger conversion I did. I think it was January 2017 where I got this all finished up. Now, I did not do the bagger conversion as far as the body work. I had a friend of mine who owned a cycle shop. Matter of fact, the same guy who painted the Sportster painted the back end of this thing. Not the tank, but he did paint the back end of this thing, and he did all the body work for the bagger conversion on this thing. And one of the biggest questions I get asked is, what kind of bags are they? Basically, all these are Harley Davidson 4-inch stretch bags. They are Harley Davidson lids. You can find the same kit on eBay. It was kind of cheap, and by cheap I mean inexpensive, and I mean cheap quality wise. I would not recommend getting these same ones. It's from a company called Bagger Bags, and just do your research on them. They're not that great a quality. We really had some problems. I mean, the guy had probably 10 hours just in body work trying to fix their mistakes, and the fiberglass is very thin. This has all just been dragging on the ground, and it's just cheap quality. I've had to touch up paint this thing a bunch of times, so it is what it is. It's not a huge deal, but you know, I knew this coming into it, and it sits, you know, 2 or 3 inches off the ground, but I did that on purpose. I really wanted it to sit really low and have that really, like, holy crap, look at this thing, look. Obviously I got the Stryker custom plate. I've had that since 2011 as well. And this is just a regular tail and brake light. It's really bright, and that's what lights up at night. But these bag lids have the turn signals. So these are just an LED strip basically on both sides for left and right turn signal. These bags are actually really, or these lids are actually really cool. I forget where I got them from, but they're kind of hard to find. They're not very common, but they look really cool. Okay, so that brings us to the bag mounts. As you can see, I don't know if you can really see in there, but The bag mount sits on top of the pulley for the drive belt. And you know, to get it to sit as low as I wanted it to in the back, I had to do that. I actually had to take, there was a bar that went across here that I cut out, and there's another bar that goes across here in the front. But I cut this rear one out to get it to sit a little bit lower, so the actual tire sits on the fender. And as far as the fender, you've got the factory metal fender, so I could keep the seat from about here forward is the factory fender, but from here back is all fiberglass and Bondo. So like I said, they had a bunch of time getting that thing to mold in there. If you want to do this kit yourself, the best advice I can give you is to get a good quality kit, because the body shop's going to have to do their work to it no matter what kind of kit you get. Get a better quality kit. Spend the money, get a Camtech kit, get a, I don't know, the Sinister Industries, get one of those nicer kits if you're going to do this kit yourself. If you're going to have the money into it, don't make the mistake that I made and get a cheap kit. Get a nice, good quality kit, and then do the work, and you'll be much happier in the end. All right, that brings us to the inside of the bags. So the radio that I use is just a Bluetooth amp. It's just a Bluetooth receiver, no tuner or anything like that. But you can hook your phone to it. You can hook an iPad to it or something. It's just a Kenwood unit. And another reason I liked it is because you didn't have to mount, or didn't have to run any really thick wires to get this thing to mount up right, and it really takes up a really low profile, really small amount of space in the saddlebag, so I still have the entire bag that I can use, and it goes really deep. I mean, it goes up to my forearm basically, so you can get all the storage that you need out of here. The speakers are a Kenwood Marine KFC 1653 MRB to be exact. They're 6.5s, and I liked them because number one, they were super inexpensive. They matched the bike. They were black with like a gray, I guess, speaker, which kind of matches the gray on the paint job. And they weren't that expensive, and these things sound amazing. Well, I was sitting there editing, and I realized I didn't really talk too much more about the air ride. This air ride kit is completely custom in the front. There's no kit. You can't just go buy an air ride kit for a Stryker for the front of this motorcycle. Now, for the back, you can go buy a kit from a couple different companies now. But I actually made a video, and I'll put a little link somewhere up here, maybe just a little clip from the video that I did back in, I think, 2011 or 2012. Nobody made an air ride kit for the Stryker back in those days. So I was the first one to have rear air ride on a Stryker. And the kit that I used was actually for a Hayabusa. My brother had a Hayabusa, and I used the Arnott's air suspension. And so to this day, it is still the Arnott air suspension rear shock that's on the back of this bike. Nobody made it. I mean, nobody made one. Whenever I ran the air ride, I was the absolute first person to put air ride on a Stryker. I have no doubt in my mind about that. So anyway, the way it's set up, it's not fast air, but the switches that I was showing you earlier that are on here, there's two compressors on this bike. One's mounted up front and one's mounted behind the saddlebag right here. The rear compressor controls the rear air ride, and then the front compressor controls the front air ride. So it's set up a little bit differently like we did on this bike. This bike only has one compressor. It fills this tank, and then the two paddle switches raise it up and down. So again, I want to clarify that. What one company did was they actually started making air ride kits for the rear of the Strykers, and they actually used my video of the Arnott's kit to advertise for their kit, which was totally different. So, and I actually called them out about that too. It just really didn't sit right with me. They were using my kit, my air ride, my knowledge and my research and trial and error to advertise their product that I didn't even use. So, you know, water under the bridge at this point, but I am the first person to ever run rear air ride on this Yamaha Stryker, and I know for a fact I'm the first person to run the front air ride. Not that I'm bragging or anything, but it just goes to show you the amount of innovation and the amount of the amount of effort that I put into this thing. The aftermarket community for these bikes is not that great. So people like me have to be the innovators to do things like this. I mean, obviously, there's other people at this point. You know, the bike's, 7 years old. There's 2011 to 2017. So that's 7 years roughly of innovation for this bike now. And I'm not an aftermarket parts builder, but I am a bit of an innovator. So for me to run the front and rear air ride on this thing, it's kind of a one-off thing. You know, I mean, it's not a big, huge secret on how to do it, but as far as I know, this is the only one with front and rear air. And again, there's neither of those kits, front or rear, is a bolt-on kit. They were both custom made. I had to make both of them work and fabricate some different links and whatnot in the back. So take that how you want to. This is pretty much going to be a wrap for the end of this bike. But if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. You know, this was kind of a secretive build for a while, but you know, with as much interest as I've seen in it, I'd like to be more proactive on answering questions and, you know, helping people out that have these bikes. You can pick these bikes up for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 now. So, you know, a lot of people might be interested in doing something like this. And, you know, I've obviously moved on to other projects now. So, you know, I don't mind sharing the information and the research that I've done to build mine the way it is. It's not the best thing in the world, but for the budget I've had and the amount of time I have invested into it, it actually turned out really cool, in my opinion. So that's going to do it for today's video, guys. I hope you guys found some information in here to be helpful. Again, I was trying to make this video to reach out to those who might be interested in doing something like this as well. But as you can see, I have other builds back here. That's a Sportster build. Again, if you haven't checked that video out, go back and watch them. I've got a start to finish build series on that thing. It's a really cool series. I had a lot of fun making it. And this other bike right here is my 1980 CB750. And as you can see, there's another tire sitting right here. And that's what the next video is going to be about. We're going to do a breakdown on what I did with this bike and why it looks the way it does, and why I have another tire sitting right here when the tire that's on it is brand new. So thanks again for watching, guys. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. If you haven't followed me on Instagram, follow me. It's @the_Brian Rogers. I usually post to Instagram before I post to YouTube, so you kind of get an inside scoop before a video drops on my YouTube channel. So thanks again, guys, for watching. We'll see you in the next one.